Now, is Scotland closer to fulfilling the dream of local TV, where even relatively small areas of the country get their own dedicated channels? The Coalition Government's Culture Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, has talked about what he called a landscape of local TV across the UK. There's speculation around a figure as high as 80 new channels. But can small-scale television survive, or will the future actually be TV on your computer? Derek Croshaw has been watching and listening to the debate.
For all the healthcare and the attention that I've received this year, which has been wonderful.
Local people making their own local news. This is Channel Fife in Kirkcaldy. They're only on the internet at the moment, but they're ready to move into TV if conditions are right.
I mean, we are doing this on a weekly basis. I mean, we are doing it with quite limited resources, but one of the biggest reasons we're doing it is to actually prove that it can be done. We want to sustain what we're doing at the moment, basically grow what we're doing at the moment, expand the range of programming that we're doing, and within 2 years be in a position to deliver, both on internet and also possibly via Freeview, a local TV service for this region.
Inverness TV is only a few months old and only goes out online.
Now that's pretty cool.
They're not convinced that they need to be a conventional TV channel at all.
The region's dedicated online TV station.
People have been speaking about local television for years and nothing's happening. But with broadband, you know, if we can get faster broadband connections, then local TV can happen. Inverness has got its own one. The reason why you can't have a Rossshire television, you can't have a Caithness television, why you can't have a Lanarkshire television.
Broadcasting is an area controlled by Westminster, and Jeremy Hunt, the Coalition Government's Culture Secretary, is a fan of local TV. To help, he's going to lift the ban on the same companies owning newspapers, TV and radio stations. That's encouraging to some of Scotland's local newspapers, like the Dunfermline Press.
As a publisher, we would definitely want to be at the table when local TV is being explored, and that we already are. And I think the key for us is partnership. We know what our strengths are, and they are valuable to any partnership which is going to deliver local TV. So we want to be part of it, we want to work to others to be part of it. And I think one of the positives of the Jeremy Hunt recommendations are that it clears some of the landscape to actually enable us to do that.
Local TV has been seen before in Scotland.
Hello, I'm David Gray. There's a microphone down there and you're watching Channel 6.
A decade ago, there were stations in Lanarkshire and Edinburgh as well as Dundee. They all struggled with low-strength signals. But the demand for local TV is there, according to the man behind Channel 6 Dundee. Dave Rushton insists that broadband-only channels can't deliver small-scale TV to enough people in Scotland, and says that giving local TV channels full access to transmitters is crucial.
In Scotland, we are in a much better position than the southeast of England because our television signals are not compromised by having to share them with Europe. So we actually have ample capacity to deliver local television services to a much more discrete civic scale of local viewer, but we need to make sure that central government recognises that Scotland's advantage is an important thing to Scotland to ensure localness, and we don't end up with a centralised model delivered to the compromises of the southeast of England.
The Scottish Government's Culture Minister, Fiona Hislop, is pushing for a new digital TV network north of the border to provide opportunities for more localised broadcasting. The former Grampian TV head of news and Conservative MSP Ted Brocklebank backs that.
I see this digital channel, which has been widely supported by all parties in the Scottish Parliament, operating across Scotland, but with the ability for the local TV companies to opt in and out of that digital coverage. So, for example, we would have obviously a national morning news on the digital channel. When I say national, I mean Scottish national news. But as part of that, the local channels could hive off and go and do their own things at that time of the morning if they wish to.
But just how local is local TV? What's in it? Who provides it and who pays for it? All of these questions remain unresolved. The UK government is promising an action plan by the end of the year, so stay tuned.
Derek Croshaw there. Well, I'm joined now by the chair of the Scottish Digital Network panel, Blair Jenkins. Blair, thanks very much indeed for coming in. When we look at the new digital channel and providing public sector broadcasting on that, what's the big idea here? What's the motivation here?
Well, I think there's definitely a demand in Scotland for a greater volume and range of high-quality Scottish broadcasting. And the other key thing, I suppose, would be to provide that secure and sustainable competition for the BBC in Scottish broadcasting, which I think is widely recognised that we need.
I mean, when you look at this, I know you're making recommendations in the new year, but when you're looking at this, how do you imagine it would actually be funded? Because that must be the critical question at a time like this.
Well, I mean, I understand the journalistic impulse to get cut to the chase and get to the end of the process, but we're 1 month into a 3-month process. At the end of the day, what we will have to come back with is a fairly robust set of options. We've been asked to look at the different funding models, the different options for setting up the digital network, and that's what we'll come back with in the mid-January. But the key point, which I heard Ted Brocklebank make in the report there, is that there is support right across the political spectrum for this concept. If you like, we managed to get all the political parties onto the same wavelength. And I think it's very, very important that we maintain that broad support for what's now the settled view on the future for Scottish broadcasting.
But whatever the support, there can only be a certain number of routes you can go down in order to fund this. One would be presumably top slicing the BBC licence fee, another would come from advertising, another would be a government grant, or it could be a mixture of all three. I mean, what do you think realistically are the propositions here for funding? Well,
we have to look at all the options. I mean, you're right, there is the option which is, if you like, the purest public service option, which is to go for a form of public funding. And the licence fee is one option there. One of the interesting precedents or consequences of the recent deal on the licence fee is that it's accepted now that the licence fee funds not just the BBC, but now the Welsh language channel S4C, and also a substantial contribution towards the costs of local television. So that principle now seems to be accepted across all the political parties, that potentially the licence fee, while it will always largely be directed towards the BBC, could fund other forms of public service broadcasting as well. But you're right, there are a number of options, there are a number of commercial models as well, and mixtures of public and private funding. We have to look at all of those, and this is a time when governments and others are looking at more imaginative ways in which things can be funded, and I would hope that by the time we get to January we'll have come up with some imaginative suggestions. Well, of course, another effect of the recent funding round licence fee is an effective 16% cut in BBC funding, and you are looking at taking even more out. I mean, is there a balance that has to be struck here about quality control? Well, there always will be a balance to be struck. I mean, the digital network, the Scottish digital network, would equate to about 2% of the licence fee. So it's a relatively small portion of the licence fee. But you're absolutely right. What one wouldn't want to do is reduce the BBC's funding to an extent where the BBC is damaged, and I don't think anyone would want to do that. But these are early days. I think we have to look at all of the options. The licence fee is one. There are definitely other potential sources of funding as well. There very local TV could fit into that as well, you think? I mean, local television has had advocates in Scotland for many years, and there clearly is a demand for something new for that kind of service. If we are going to have local TV services in Scotland, then I do believe the Scottish Digital Network would be the natural host channel, the natural host network for those services. Blair Jenkins, thank you so much. We have to leave it there. Thanks very much for coming in. And that is it from me. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Good afternoon.